Welcome back. We're still with Dr. Jibrin Ibrahim, a Senior Fellow of the Center for Democracy and Development. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you.
Still on the subject of anti-corruption, and of course the fight against it by the present administration, let's look at it right now. There are some speculations or outright talk that this fight is lopsided. What do you think?
The fight against corruption is always lopsided. That is those who have engaged in corrupt acts that are charged and prosecution for their corrupt acts. People who have not engaged in corrupt acts should not ordinarily be charged. So it's always lopsided on the side of those who have committed the crime.
No, get this right. The talk is that the federal government is simply going after people on the other side.
Yeah, the point I'm making is that you need evidence of corrupt acts before you can charge and prosecute somebody. My understanding is that they are charging and prosecuting those they have identified as having engaged in acts of corruption. I'm not aware of people who have engaged in acts of corruption who are not being investigated, charged, and prosecuted.
Interesting. So you stand on the part that everything that's been done right now is on the right track. In any case, now looking ahead, do you think this anti-corruption fight really is deviating the government from doing the actual dealing with the actual challenges? For instance, some people also might say that the anti-corruption fight is so concentrated that other issues, are taking backstage.
I think there is a huge challenge of re-establishing governance in this country. Governance stopped in Nigeria because the level of corruption reached a stage when it became impossible to deliver on public goods. For example, over a 16-year period, we invested $20 to $25 billion in the power sector. During that period, there wasn't even a 1,000 megawatts increase in power production. We know from international best practices that $1 billion gives you 1,000 megawatts. This means over the 16 years, we should have had at least 25,000 megawatts of power produced in this country. These people stole all that money. They deprived Nigerians of access to electricity. So many Nigerians were killed by buying small generators, putting them in their bedrooms, and being killed by carbon monoxide poisoning. Businesses collapsed because they didn't have access to electricity. When you assess the damage done to Nigeria, its economy, and its people by that $25 billion they stole for electricity, that is why we did not develop to our potentials. So if we do not turn the tide, if we do not have a government that says, let's find out people who destroy this country, let's deal with them, there is a rational reason for that approach, which is that there isn't 1,000 ways of stopping corruption. There's only one way. People who engage in corruption must be punished for their acts. For so long in this country, people have engaged in corruption, they've got away with it, and that's why governance collapsed. I think what this administration is saying, let's begin to teach them a lesson, not because you want to punish people, but because you want public resources to be used for the public good. That will never happen if you allow people get away with massive acts of looting from the national treasury. My position is that the best thing the Buhari administration can do is to ensure that every single public official who had been involved in mega looting of our treasury must go to jail. If he does that, it means even members of his administration who may want to engage in corruption will think twice. Everybody will begin to sit up and say, now the regime has changed. Now the culture has changed. If I do it, there will be consequences for me. And that's when you begin to reestablish proper governance in this country. I think this government is doing the right thing. They are focused, and we as ordinary citizens should encourage them.
So would you now advocate for the creation of special courts for the prosecution of corruption cases?
I think specialization in the anti-corruption struggle is extremely important. I think the first reason why it's important is that you want judges and prosecutors who have built up considerable competence and experience, who have mastered the ways in which people who engage in corrupt acts try to avoid justice. And by establishing special courts, you increase the competence and specialization of those in charge of prosecution. But I think there's a broader issue in terms of achieving success. I believe, for example, that we have a culture in this country. Just because you are a senior advocate of Nigeria, you can delay a court for years on end, a case for years on end. And you abuse that privilege of a senior advocate to serve the interests of corruption. I think the judiciary in this country and the bar in this country must change their ways, and people who unnecessarily delay and divert prosecution should be dealt with, even if they are senior advocates of Nigeria. The judiciary also has a problem. There are people who have been charged for corruption, and certain judges have given a ruling of permanently preventing the prosecution of such people. Any judge who does that is an enemy of this country and must be dismissed immediately by the National Judicial Institute. So I think there's a whole series of measures that we need to take to improve our capacity to successfully prosecute corrupt public officials.
Or else you think there will be some delay? Is that your opinion?
Some of those who were charged in the former governors 2003, 2007, who were charged, the cases have still not been terminated, many of them. And that's because they have powerful lawyers who are intimidating judges and preventing successful prosecution. And I'm saying the whole prosecutorial institution must improve its capacity to stop blockages deliberately created by people who have received a share of those acts of corruption. The senior advocates of Nigeria who do this do so because they have received billions from the stolen money. So they themselves are acting as part of the guilty party, and that's why they try to prevent successful prosecution. And I'm saying such people must be identified and dealt with.
You see, there's this a bill that was passed, the Asset Forfeiture Bill, to, of course, give more impetus to the fight against graft. But do you think that is really going to help?
Of course it will help. Part of the lacuna in our laws is that people steal and we do not recover what the totality of what they have stolen, because some of the laws are not up to date, and they state fines rather than first and foremost full recovery of everything that has been stolen. As far as I'm concerned, once we don't have a forfeiture principle in which the totality of the amount stolen is returned to the state, then we haven't really made significant progress in this struggle.
So do you think corruption in Nigeria basically hampered the fight against Boko Haram? Because there are other indices as well, but is this the major one?
I think corruption was one of the major reasons why Boko Haram was able to overpower so much of our territory. And I say it's corruption because the key issue was that our equipment and arms had degraded considerably. We had not done major purchases since 1982, and when this challenge arose, it was a major challenge. The response of the Jonathan administration was, okay, we'll provide money to buy the necessary arms so that we can successfully fight. That money was provided, but the money was not used to procure arms. In that context, soldiers were forced to go and fight with arms that were not up to the challenge they were facing, where the enemy was better armed than the armed forces. That's totally unacceptable. Since that was caused by corruption, it meant corruption was the major challenge that allowed Boko Haram to have the success that it had. And I feel it's precisely for that reason that I'm saying the crimes committed were not just crimes of corruption, but crimes of against humanity, crimes associated with the promotion of mass atrocities against the people of this country.
Well, thank you very much for your time on Dateline Abuja. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Well, thank you as always for your mails. Keep your views and comments coming using the address and Twitter handle on your screen. And you can let us know anything happening within your locality, especially if you're in the nation's capital. Don't forget, you can view the program on youtube.com/channelsweb/videos. Make a comment after viewing any of the videos. Always remember to include your name and where you're writing from. Thank you for watching this week. I'm Gloria Umezuke. Bye-bye from Abuja.